Boy,
Book carrying.
full of a lot of material.
Will there be homework?
Yeah, well, I often tell a lot of people, they'll ask me when I speak, so why are you wearing a tie or in a sport coat and dressed up? And I'll say, I want to make absolutely sure that people know that a homeless man, because I was homeless for 3 years in Bremen, can look pretty good. Right? All cleaned up, there we go.
Cleans up pretty big.
Okay, cool.
And yes, that's
Cleaned up
it.
really
I
well.
cleaned up really well. I tried really hard. I took a shower and the whole thing. So, you can go down to Pioneer Square and you can find people that are sleeping this morning, haven't been cleaned up and haven't had a shower for maybe 6 months, believe it or not. The bottoms of their feet, because their socks, they haven't changed their socks in 3 or 4 months, and the material is growing into their feet, which is terrible. So thank you for your gracious invitation this morning. It's really wonderful to be here. I'm going to pass around something. On one side, you'll see, if you will, you'll see some of the speaking events I do around the country, actually. Luckily, here lately, I've had some really cool speaking events. I spoke to the youth at Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints out in Port Orchard. They have a very active youth group, as you know. Pretty soon they're going to be knocking on your door saying, "Have you heard the word?" And then 4 days later, I spoke to a group of seniors at the Tacoma Lutheran Retirement Center out in Tacoma on the other side of the bridge. And that was really wonderful, about 130 people in the room, and they're retired. But I told them, hey, you're not dead. There's a lot of good things you can do in this world to help homeless people. The thing I'm passing around has a picture of a homeless man. If I just hold it up like this, you'll see that this man is with his dog. Beautiful golden retriever, and you can see the love between the two right there. And then on the other side, you'll see a picture of me speaking in Columbus, Ohio, with being introduced by John Glenn, the astronaut. John, of course, died about 1.5 years ago. And my dog, Willow, which is very important.
Where's Willow?
She's here.
Did you bring her?
She's right here, right beside us. Right beside us, right here. Actually, she'd be looking for some snacks about this time. So, I'm going to go back in time a little bit here, if I can. See, I'm probably the oldest person in here. I know I don't look over 50, but maybe there's somebody challenging me for that. But I'm going to go back in time when I was about 9 years old. And the reason for that is that I lived in a little town. Anybody here from Ohio? Anybody from Ohio, right? Lincoln, Ohio. You drove through once. Michigan, okay. Yeah. We don't recognize that as a state in Ohio.
New York.
Just kidding, just kidding. But truthfully, when I was 9 years old, I never saw any homeless people in my little town. And I don't know, maybe they were there, but I never saw one. And I remember my father, especially, and I was a baseball fan, a big baseball fan. I had a picture of the Cleveland Indians on the wall, all the heroes and their pennant up there in my little room. And at night I'd turn on the radio, listen to the ball game before I go to sleep. And sure enough, my mother would come up and say, "Richard, turn on that radio. You gotta." Yeah, you gotta get up in the morning and go to school. Turn that radio off. Well, I'd turn it down just as low as I could. And maybe you can put the covers over it so my mom would go away. And there we go. So, and again, I never saw any homeless people. Now, I love baseball so much. My father was a working man. He would come back about 4:30, and I would come home from school on my American Flyer bicycle. And I would ride it right in the front yard and throw it down in the grass. And then I'd run in the house to get my baseball glove. See, because I was kind of spoiled. I had the American Flyer bicycle in a little town in Ohio. And my dad loved baseball. And I'd run in and I'd get the glove and the ball and his glove too. pretty soon this little red car would pull up in front of the house, and I would put up the glove and ball like this, and my dad would say, "Yes, son, just hold on a minute. I got to put my stuff in the house. I'll be right back out." And sure enough, he would come out, and we'd throw the ball back and forth. And how many people in this movie, how many people remember the movie Field of Dreams? Have you seen that movie? Right. And and there's a little saying from that movie that's still saying,
Build it and they will come.
"Build it and they will come." And those who know a little bit about our city leads the way in many ways in helping homeless people. The Salvation Army has a new building with showers, laundry facilities. Actually, they have a manicurist that comes in once a week to help people. They give free haircuts. And the Peninsula Healthcare comes in to check on people, make sure they're okay. And so does the Westside Clinic. There's also the Rescue Mission, which is right up the street. There's a Coffee Oasis, which is a wonderful place for youth. Yet still, we have a growing population of homeless people. But let's go back to Ohio, is that okay? And throwing that ball back and forth. My dad was sort of a wheeler dealer, maybe even a sort of a Trumpian type of guy, but he always had deals for me. "Son, would you wash my car? I'll take you to the Dairy Queen." "Oh, okay, Dad. That's great." And, "Son, golly, if you mow the grass, I'll take you to the Dairy Queen." So always the Dairy Queen. Always a deal like that. I was really, and so because I was young and I loved the Dairy Queen. So. But this one time he said, we were throwing the ball back and forth, and it was getting close to spring. And he says, "Son," says, "I got a deal for you." He said, "You can help your mom around the house. There's no reason why you can't push that little sweeper around, right? And there's no reason why you can't do a lot of things. You can help her with the dishes. You're getting to be a big boy." And I said, "Okay, Dad," because I figured the Dairy Queen was going to be coming. Instead, he said, "I'll tell you what, if you help your mom, I'll take you to see the Cleveland Indians play the New York Yankees in Cleveland." Right, the Yankees. Any Yankee fans in here? There, I know there's always one. Well, you have
New York.
I know, there's always one somewhere. What a great talent you have, by the way. Unbelievable. So, yes, oh man, as an Indians fan, I just couldn't wait for that day to come. And sure enough, at that time, Urbana's down around where Columbus is, so it's a pretty good drive, particularly in those days. So we drove up there. We had to spend the night. My dad sprung for a hotel room, and we spent the night. And gosh, in the morning, we got up and I had to have
Did you see Mickey Mantle?
I did. So every was in the morning we got up and had a big bowl of Wheaties, the breakfast of champions, and pretty soon we headed to the ballpark. And there's a beautiful park there at that time. That time it was Municipal Stadium. Was a big stadium where they played football. There were 80,000 people that would come to the season opener. So there were 80,000 people on their way as we were walking through this park. And sure enough, we got about halfway through the park, right by the beautiful Lake Erie there, and a man sitting on a bench, an old brown coat on, a brown hat, and he got up and came towards us and said, are you boys going to the game?" And I'm a little pipsqueak out of a little town, so I'm not afraid of anybody. I said, "Yes, and the Indians are going to win. They're going to beat the Yankees today." Well, he warned me. He said, that they have Yogi Berra, that's right, and who hit a home run that day, by the way, and Mickey Mantle, and I said, "I don't care. The Indians are going to win." Right? I knew they were going to win. So as we finished our conversation with this man, we turned to say our adieu. He called out to my dad and said, actually got up the courage to say to my dad, "Sir, can you help me? I'm homeless, I'm living here, and I stay here in the park during the day, and I sleep under the eaves of the stadium at night. Is it possible you could help me with some spare change?" And so my dad, who had lived through the Depression and lived through World War II, he reaches in his pocket, takes out some money, looks to me like about $1. Well, $1, in 1954, I think it was, It was a lot of money, you
Went a
know?
long way.
Yeah, you go a long way on a dollar, so I gave the man a dollar, and it sort of shocked me a little bit, because I watched him do it. But then he said, we gotta go, sir, and we headed for the stadium. And we got far enough away, probably as close to the coffee pots over there, far enough away where I didn't think the man could hear me, and I said, "Hey, Dad, was that a bum?" Because I'd heard about bums, and now here I am in a big city, and I see one. Well, now I think back on it, I probably should have said this: "Sir, why don't you have a home? Why? Why don't you have a home? You know, were you messed up in the war? Are you cuckoo? Did your wife leave you? You know, did you lose your job? Why are you here? Everybody I know has a home, but you. There must be something wrong with you." That would have been what I would have said. But see, I'm 9 years old, and I'm going to the ball game, and I'm not thinking that way about other people. That's me and the ball game and the Indians. You know. So sure enough, we head on, and sure, by the way, I can tell you that the Indians won that game 5-2. But the Yankees have had their share of Indian wins. So the ball game is over. I do what my mom and dad do. I go to junior high school, and high school, I go to Ohio State University. I was actually on the track team at Ohio State because I was a good athlete at that time. And I love to please my mom and dad, and I love people. I like being around them, and sure enough, I never, ever expected to be just like that man that I met in the park, you know, when I was about 60 years old. You know. Never would I ever expected that. You know. People say, well, you know, I don't, at that time, they could have said, you'll never be homeless, Richard, because you work hard. You work hard, you play hard. You're never going to be homeless, you know? And I agree. I would have never believed that I would ever be homeless in Bremerton, Washington. Because, you know, I got my dream. And I've told people this everywhere. I speak at a lot of high schools and junior high schools and the detention center here a couple times a year. And I ask the kids, what's your dream? What is your dream? What is your dream? You still dream, right? What's your dream? You got a dream today?
Come on, Billy.
What? You got it, but you want to tell me. How about you? What's your dream?
Music, of course.
You got a great voice, a great song. You remind me of a very famous singer. Does anybody tell you about that? You got that same voice as, no, okay.
I've heard many.
Many different ones, right? But and so you want to be on a big stage, right? That's right. That's right. And so, how about you? A dream?
Just to be happy.
Just to be happy. That's a good one.
Uh-huh.
And you?
I'm dreaming that the Yankees beat Cleveland today.
Oh, there it is. I know. Oh, we're taking the last two
Today.
games. Today. So I had a dream too, see, because after I graduated from high school, I was a sports writer for 17 years in Ohio at a big newspaper called Springfield Sun. We had 4 editions, you know, 250,000 people read that newspaper every day in Clark County. And so I got to interview all kinds of wonderful athletes. I covered the Cincinnati Reds when they had the big red machine. I could still fill out the card, you know, Johnny Bench, Concepcion, Pete Rose, Joe Morgan, and so I got to cover golf. I covered Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer, tennis, Jimmy Connors and John McEnroe, and so I covered the heroes of sports at that time. I saw their lifestyle, how they were, you know. They were rich, I thought, you know. So yes, I wanted a dream like theirs. I wanted to be, quote, rich and have all these things. And sure enough, I got an opportunity in 1980 to move to Seattle. for a company that interviewed me as a sports writer and said that I bet you could be a good salesman too. And so would you work for my company in Seattle? Seattle is called the Emerald City. You're going to love it. You know, it's a beautiful place, which it is. Yeah. And so I moved out here, and sure enough, within a short period of time, I started collecting my dream. Put up my dream up there, big cloud. You know, I had a 42-foot Bayliner up over in Kingston, under the covers there. The marina was bouncing up and down. I had a ski boat. I had traveled a lot. I went to Paris. I went to Rome. I stayed in the Hotel de Paris in Monte Carlo. I walked on the Great Wall of China. I had my dream going full blast, you know. And did I ever think about a homeless shelter or homeless people? You know, if you would have said to me, "Hey, Richard, my friend, I'm serving a meal down at the Salvation Army on Friday. Every Friday now I've been doing it. And boy, I feel good after I do that. It's just wonderful how I feel when I leave there. How are you doing it with me? Come with me, Richard." I would have said, "Oh, you know, that sounds like a great idea. I'm busy this Friday, and probably can't do it next Friday, Friday after that, but remind me." I had no intention of going to help serve a meal at the Salvation Army or the soup kitchen or anyplace else. I was on my way to other things. I was busy collecting my dream. Well, what happens to a person when they got their dream and it begins to disappear? And that's what happened. My business that I started working for, eventually I got a chance to take over that business because they wanted to do something else. That's what big corporations do. Yeah? And Bill Wrigley, the guy who, everybody in this room has at one time or another had probably Wrigley's Spearmint gum. He was the president of the company. He called me and said, "Richard," he said, "we're going to get out of this business." And what it was, I got to tell you what it was, for those who don't know. How many people here have heard me speak before about that? Okay. Well, I had a business, I was producing medical directories. And in those directories were lists of doctors. So in there, you would find a listing of every doctor in Washington State, their specialty, what they did, where they graduated from college or university, their home phone, which is very important if you were a nurse at Harborview Hospital, trying to get a hold of a doctor because the patient was dying, or you were a real estate salesman and you wanted to sell a doctor a home. That's how valuable that was. And also their cell phone number, even though cell phones were like this big, you know, but it was the beginning of that cellular world that we live in now. And so I was making a lot of money. But a company called Microsoft was producing these little discs. And sure enough, very soon, there was no need for my books. And then I felt, what happens then? Somebody begins to lose all the things that they worked so hard for. I had never experienced that. Failure. Little failures, maybe. But not that big one. Not that one that just takes everything away. And sure enough, I had to sell the paintings that I brought back from Rome. I had to sell the Bayliner that was over I had to sell the ski boat. I had to sell just about everything. And pretty soon my wife says, "Richard, I can't stand to see you do it this way. You're just falling apart," because I was in depression. Didn't know it. I denied it. Didn't know what it was. Anyone ever felt that way before? You know? Yeah, I'm okay. Just hand me a nice big glass of wine. You know, something to anesthetize myself from this terrible world now that God or something has happened here. Someone took this away from me. And sure enough, I would drive away from that dream, is the way I like to say it. Whatever I could, I put it in the back of whatever clothes I had in the back of my van, and I had my dog, Willow. And everyone in this room has seen that picture of that wonderful dog. A dog that originally I didn't want. My wife Sandra said we should get a dog again, and I said, "I'm too busy for a dog. I play golf on the weekend. I'm too busy. And we don't need a dog." Well, yes we do, sweetie. Well, no, it's your dog. If you want to get a dog, you got to take care of it. I don't want it. And sure enough, I ended up with a dog. Thank God, Willow came along on my ride away from that dream. And so for the first 6 weeks, this is just to tell you how it can feel. Because sometimes we see homeless people and we don't know how they feel. Sometimes they can be a rather loud and belligerent. Sometimes they can just be like this. You know? Everybody's different. Well, I didn't want to see anybody, that was for sure, because I had failed. And so I traveled around different places, begging for gas in front of grocery stores, doing everything I could just to stay alive. And I did that for about 6 months, trying to avoid people. I remember my first attempt. How many people have read my book? That's great. I remember my first attempt at begging at the Central Market in Paulsville. That didn't work very well. And across the street, if you will, the lady in red came through with $67 for a hotel room, dog food for Willow. But sure enough, and I especially tell this story at high schools when I speak, and junior high. And I'll repeat it here because it's important to know how this man felt on Christmas Eve, or Christmas Day, 2002, how I actually felt. You know, I felt worthless. There was nothing coming back. There was no way, everything was gone. You know, and there was no way I was ever going to get any of that back. It didn't make any difference. I wanted the dog, I wanted the wife back, I wanted the cars back, I wanted everything back. And so on Christmas Day 2002, seems like a long time ago, but in my mind it's not. I went to the Tacoma Narrows Bridge to end that life because he was worthless, a worthless man. And I put a bowl of food and a bowl of water on the floorboard of that van, and a note on the dashboard that says, "This is my dog Willow. When you find her, please love her." Because here's how your mind can work. You know, I thought, hey, someone's going to find her. You know, and they're going to have a family with a couple children. It's going to be wonderful for her. It's better than going around with this worthless homeless guy. You know, eating hamburgers that he begs for money and then buys her a Willow burger. You know, at McDonald's. You know, everybody knows at McDonald's they knew Willow because I'd pull in and she'd get in my lap and they'd say, "It's time for a Willow burger," and they would give me just plates of meat and for her free. You know. And so on that night, as I closed the doors, I left the window down a little bit so there'd be some fresh air, and I quickly turned away from the van and walked on that path out onto the bridge. And as I got out there, I put my hands on the rail, and I started to climb over to end that worthless life. I had my first of many miracles I would have, including coming here today. You know? The miracle is that I could hear my dog barking. I could hear her scratching on the window. I could hear her tearing the upholstery. How many here have a dog? How many here have always had a dog at one time or another? That's right. And they're all up there with Willow, rolling around in the heavenly grass, and having a great time. So she's waiting for me to show up. But I could hear it. Now, of course, it would have been impossible. You know, has anybody walked across that bridge? You ever walk across it? It rattles, it makes noise, it actually moves. The trucks are making noise. You can't hear very much. The wind is blowing like a howling, and that's exactly what was doing that night. The rain was coming down hard in my face. I was all wet. And sure enough, I could hear her. Now, later on, because I would go to Kitsap Mental Health and see Rodney Hitchcock, my psychologist, and my psychiatrist, Dr. Gosh, how could I forget his name? Dr. Bob. Dr. Bob. And Dr. Bob was the first one I saw as a psychiatrist, and he said that, I believe you, Richard. I know this happened. I know you can hear Willow. And he said, I got one thing to say to you. Whatever you do, don't ever get rid of that dog.
Oh.
Which I didn't, because, to answer your question, she's still right here, right beside me, and will always be. And I wish I could get another dog, but Willow's just a memory. I just can't find another Willow. So, time passes a little bit. That night, next morning, I woke up in the Salvation Army parking lot. It was wet, I was wet, it was cold, and people were getting in line at the old brick building downtown Bremerton. How many people have been in that building? Good. And now, of course, they have a nice, beautiful one, big building. But sure enough, I woke up, people were getting in line, and they were talking. I could hear them talking. It was the day after Christmas. And I myself got in line right behind them with that Willow in the car, in the van. And I didn't know what to expect in that building, because I had heard that all these homeless people were dangerous. They all had knives and guns, and they were all taking drugs, and it was just they were all bad. And so I was a little bit frightened of them. Sure enough, we went through the line. I got my little tray like I was going back to school. And I really was. I was going back to school in life. I got my tray, got a Pat the cook. Anyone here know Pat? Pat the cook. She put a piece of meat on my plate, and then she put some carrots, because everything they had left over from the Christmas feast they had the day before, the Navy guys had prepared for the people. All they had left was carrots. So I got some carrots. And sure enough, a donut. And everyone knows that the Salvation Army gets all the leftover donuts from Safeway or Albertsons on the expiration date. So that thing expired on December the 19th. My donut was dead. That thing was like, for all the stuff was falling off of it by this time. And it was pretty like a heart of a rock. So I did get my chair, the room, the round tables there. I still picture it a lot. And as I got there to sit down, there was only 2 seats left. And one man jumped up, said to me, hey, I'm never seen you here before. He said, what's your name? I said, my name's Richard. He said, well, I'm Gentleman Jake. He reached out like this and shook my hand real hard. Later on, I would find out Gentleman Jake was a veteran of Vietnam, which is detailed in my book. He had fought for me while I was, quote, building my dream, and I didn't have to go to Vietnam. And then, as time went, and then as I was sitting down again, this guy comes along, he looks at me and he says, you're new. I said, yeah. He said, well, I'm C, just C. And he reaches out to shake my hand, do like this, and he says, yeah, call me C, and then draws the letter C like this in the space, so I knew exactly who he was. Has anyone ever here run into C during that time period at all? He's hard to find. So there I was, and I looked around that room, and you know what? I didn't see any dangerous people. I didn't see anybody with guns or knives, I thought, I didn't see anybody that I thought I should be scared of. I saw women and children, eating breakfast at the Salvation Army the day after Christmas. And I changed my mind right there and then about how I thought about homeless people. And I recognized for the first time that I was homeless too. But I was a human being. I was still a good person. I wasn't worthless at all. So I've got a whole new group of friends. Instead of the millionaire that lived next door to me that was doing cocaine all the time. Now I got C and Gentleman Jake. And because I have wheels, I got lots of friends. A homeless man with wheels. Sure enough. And so they would give me 50 cents or a quarter, or even this or another dollar to put gas in my tank, and we'd drive to these church dinners. You know, we drove out to the fairgrounds, Lutheran church on the corner, where wonderful Mary Ann would have a meal, and the ladies there and men would have a meal there for us. And gosh, it was the first time I was there, I had the best lasagna I've ever had. And I had the lasagna in Florence and Venice and Rome. This was the best lasagna I've ever had. We used to kid her because she had made noodle casserole. And I would say to her, you gotta put some potato chips on top. Crunch those potato chips. Sure enough, she started doing that. So we have that. And so, and this is People's Diner in the basement of the Episcopal Church. You know, every Saturday and Sunday, she would have a feast for us in which we would go, and she had napkins and table settings on the table and tablecloths. And she'd look at us as we were her guests. We were important to her, you know. We were important to her. She'd call us by name as she learned our name. You know, Richard, sit up straight. Is it your birthday? And if it was somebody's birthday in this room, or it'd be maybe 80 plus people, you know, some another birthday cakes would come out of the back, you know, and sure enough, we'd have us all sing happy birthday. For 3 years, no one sang happy birthday to me because I didn't tell them. I should have told them. You know. But that's what would happen. And I consider that to be magic, a miracle. The worthless homeless man, slowly but surely, began to understand that there are other people in the world besides him. Slowly but surely, he would come to the conclusion that people were reaching out and trying to help, trying to, if you would, make lunch or dinner or breakfast at all these different places I went to have something to eat. And I came to the conclusion that, my gosh, you know, this world is not so bad, you know. And then I started writing about them. And those who have read my book know the experiences I have. You know, the two children, you know, living with Dorothea in a storage unit. You know, how she took care of her children, even though she had nothing. Nothing. And so I just started to love life again. I started writing about it. And the first experiences I had with that, as you know, I tried to throw it away because it came right back to me. And sure enough, I got to the point where I sort of finished the book, and at these meals, the homeless people would say, "Richard's writing a book. We're going to be in it. We're going to be in it." And as time went on, this one lady came to me and she said, "You know, these people think you're going to write a book about them. You're not really writing a book, are you?" I said, "Yeah, I am. She said, "No, you just want to make yourself important. That's what you're doing. You just want to be more important than everybody else." And I said, "No, there'll be a book. Someday there'll be a book." But you know, that wasn't totally guaranteed that there'd be a book. So, sure enough, it happened. The universe produces a book that goes out into the world. Now, everybody in this room knows that Bremerton is the literary capital of the world, right? And we also know that the chance of a book written in Bremerton, Washington, is that's going to go everywhere, right? People are going to read it in New York City, right? People are going to read it in Rome. People are going to read it around the world. And so I believe. I don't know why I believe, but I did. And here's the Korean edition of Breakfast at Sally's. For those who haven't seen it, I'll pass it around. You'll see a picture of me on the front cover with my dog Willow. It is in Korean. It's a beautiful piece of work they did. And there's a miracle on that front cover. When it gets to you, you'll see it. They decided I needed hair, so they put hair on it. But wonderfully the book has gone out into the world. And I was talking just a minute ago. I didn't plan it. I didn't write a book to help anybody. That was not my intention. I didn't write a book to make money, and I made so little money on that book, it's ridiculous. But the book has done a lot of good for a lot of people. And good example, just 9 months ago, I had spoken to all the King County libraries and libraries in different places, in Tacoma and Portland and Bellingham. But the Everett Library called and they said, Mr. Lemieux, we don't know how we missed this, but would you come to our library and speak? And I said, sure, I'd be glad to. Well, actually, it was the season opening for the Seahawks. And I thought, oh man, why, they must have known that the homeless writer is coming to town. And so there will be nobody there, right? Well, I drove to Everett, got there early, it was a Sunday, and I pulled around into the parking lot, and if you've never been in the Everett Library, it's a beautiful library. It looks very much like the library at the University of Washington. The ceiling is like a big boat, upside down, and so we had the opportunity to get there, and out in front of the building, they had the marquee there, and the marquee had the picture of my book cover. Ah, boy, my ego just jumped, hey, yeah, look, that's pretty cool. And so I parked in the garage, and I come around the front to admire myself. And as I'm doing that, I hear this voice that says, Mr. Lemieux, Mr. Lemieux. I said, turn around and look, and here comes about 20 people. And they all waiting for the library to open, because it only opens at 1 o'clock on a Sunday. And the one man comes up to me with his backpack, and he takes his backpack off, and he unzips it, and he reaches inside and takes out a copy of Breakfast at Sally's that is really well worn. And he looks at me and he says, I've been homeless now for 11 years, Mr. Lemieux. He said, I'm probably not going to get off the street. He said, I have lots of problems. He said, but your book. And he takes out this book again, and he opens it up to a part, and he reads me part of a chapter of my book, part of my chapter. And he said, whenever I really get down and out and really feeling down, he said, I read this part of your book. And so I thought, wow, what a lucky man. What a lucky man. I also speak at a lot of high schools. I'll show you. Oh, by the way, when you get a minute, I'll pass this. Before you leave, this is my signing book. So some of you, when I was down at the Church of Trenton, when you were there, like that young man there in the beautiful purple shirt there who interviewed me that day, have signed this book. But there's all kinds of people where I've traveled to Toronto, New York, Florida, wherever it is, have signed this book, Homeless People in Parks, because every morning Willow would wake me up when we were, no matter where we were, and I would grab my book and we'd head to the park so she could do her potty duty, and I'd find lots of homeless people. And they said, what's that cute little dog you have there? And I said, yeah, she's on the book cover too. Look at that. What's this book's about? It's about you, I'd say to them. It's about homeless people, because I was homeless for 3 years, and I wrote that book, and they signed it. And so people have seen the picture of John Glenn has signed it, the mayor of New York City has signed this book, the mayor of Cleveland has signed this book. A lot of people have signed that book. So please sign when you get a minute. The coolest thing I get to do in my life now is speak at high schools. I've been I like their, up there, like high school letters. I have over 2,000 letters like this over the last 9 years of speaking at either Bremerton or Central Kitsap or high schools in Bellevue, especially here in Kitsap County, where I speak to classes. And sometimes I'll speak to the 8 o'clock class, then the 9 o'clock class, then the 10 o'clock class, 10 to 20 or 30 students in the class. Or sometimes they get them all into the library. It'll be like 70 students, 3 classes together. And read my book, and then I come and speak, and then they send me these letters. And the future of, as you know, every day, if you look at yesterday's Seattle Times or the day before, half the front page was about homeless people. Many of those homeless people, like, never, ever believed that they would be homeless. No. They're not all druggies, alcoholics. They are people just down on their luck. There's not enough room, there's not enough shelters, there's not enough homes, there's not enough apartments. And so the media will focus in on the person that's laying on the ground that's using needles as the, quote, vision of the homeless people that are there. But if you go to the Lutheran Compass Center and have lunch and meet the homeless people there that are doing their laundry and taking a shower, you get a whole different picture of what a homeless person is doing in Seattle. And these letters are really cool, so I'm not going to read all 2,000. But I'll read a few sentences from some. I mean, you might know these students. This one was a student called Bailey Swanson. I'm sure she wouldn't care at all if I read part of this to you. She says, "Thank you for taking the time to come to our class. Your book changed my opinion on several aspects of life. I have decided to start giving back and helping the less fortunate in our town. I've been volunteering at the local helpline and now at the Salvation Army. Sometimes it's hard to remember to be humble and grateful for what I have. But just seeing you brought me back to the reality of what could happen to people. My sister is one of those homeless people you would never know that was homeless. She bounced around with her newborn baby until finally being taken in by another family. Your story has hit home with me because of my family situation. And you inspire me to be kind to my sister, to love her through her difficult times. I know I'm just one tiny person you have helped, but I carry your hope and your strength to keep going everywhere I go. I hope to touch lives just like you have." I remember, I didn't write that book to help anybody. It just happened. The universe somehow used me. It still is. The reason I tell you the success of this, it's not an ego thing. It's just to say that I have really been blessed. And as I pass that thing around with the man with his dog, if people in this town, in Bremerton, had not helped me, given me $1 maybe in front of Albertson when I was there with a sign, or in the parking lot, gave me $5 worth of gas, or helped me along the line, I would have never made it. At the white MCA up the street there, I went in and I asked the man at the front desk, I said, "I have no money, I'm living in my car. Can I get a shower?" And he handed me a towel, pointed, "Go ahead." The Salvation Army was there. You know, Major Jim Baker, how many people were running into Jim Baker during the time? Wonderful man, you know. I watched him, he helped me. When I was writing my book, you know, I wrote the first 2 or 3 chapters on my typewriter, and he said, "Well, I'll make you copies of that." And I still got those old copies that were made. And so, let me shove it just real quickly with it. We'll write this little letter here. But this is from Damon Perry, who writes, "Through your book and your speeches, you give life to the issue of homeless people, making it personal. And when I read your book, my other classmates read your book, we got the experience that's impossible to have unless you've been homeless. I'm going to work hard in school so I don't become homeless." Which is really important. you say you talk to us because we are the future. And we are going to make the changes needed. But without older people like you, there would be no one to inspire us to make the change that's necessary. And just one little other sentence I think I like. It says, here we go. It says, this is from Vashai Ingridson from Central Kitsap High School. She writes, your story and your presence ignited my burning desire to help out in my community right here. I have heard stories and I have participated in travels to other lands to help people. We dug a well and we built a home for a family through my church. This is good, but there are people who need that kind of help right here next door, which is true. And so, ending, I'm going to end this way. Would you all stand up? See, this is how I get a standing ovation. On the way. But, and I have a song I sing, and would you join me with your great voice? The song is called Amazing Grace.
Oh, yeah.
And it's only the first verse. But see, it is the grace of people in this area who saw something in a man and said, I can help that guy. You can't give to everybody that's on the street. Some of them are going to use it wrong. We know that. But sometimes you just see something and you say, by golly, I can do good. And at that time, find a way to help. At least have a candy bar in the car or a butt or just try. Just try. That's all we can do. We're not miracle workers. But little things count a lot. Count a lot. And so, you can tell I have a scratchy voice. I'm not a good singer, but this man is. And so, are you ready? Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Beautiful. Beautiful. And so, we still have time for questions. See, when I get to talk about what happened to me, I wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for people that cared. And so it's my story, but it's also your story. Everything that goes with that. I'm very blessed. And so, any questions? Yes.
It's going to take a lot to solve the homeless problem in Kitsap County, but there is talk about, building those tiny houses for at least some of the homeless. Do you think that will be helpful?
Well, here's the story that I met with Charlotte Garrido a year and a half ago as county commissioner. She has a real big heart for the homeless. And they actually, a church out in Port Orchard built 12, I believe is the number, tiny houses. And that they've been built now over a year ago. And they have yet to be used because the county has not approved all the permits for that. And so there's one on the Indian reservation that is operated tiny houses. I'm not a big tiny house fan. I'd rather have an apartment for each person, but it's a start. At least you can get your stuff inside, and so that's the thing. Look, it's baby steps, baby steps. If it was easy, all societal problems are not easy. There's no magic wand to fix it. There was no magic wand to take care of the depression. It took a lot of and I suggest, as I do, I have yet to hear any president, whether the president or the one or or any of them, ever get on television and say, we have a homeless emergency that we're going to work on beginning right now. And we're going to get all the people that want off the street as quickly as possible inside.
Right.
Those who don't want to come in and they now have adapted to this wonderful lifestyle of living on the street, we're going to ask them to come in. We're going to try and persuade them to come in. We're going to do everything we can find out to do to the point where we're going to say you have to come in. And build homes and apartments for those people. Right away, they won't have the money to pay for it. But I'm a firm believer that you give somebody a second chance, a high percentage of those people will say, thank you, what can I do? What do I need to do? Show me the way, and it will happen. So, yes, I believe tiny houses are a step.
So for individuals, like anybody in this room or anybody who might be watching, what would you say are the top 3 things if we see someone outside of Safeway?
Right.
And maybe we're not so inclined to give them cash for concerns of where that might lead, even though you shouldn't worry about that.
Yes.
What would you would say is something we should carry in our car or have ready that we could help that are of the most important needs for the homeless?
Yeah, I suggest this out in North Bend, which is, way out there, a small town. They have homeless people, just like in Ohio now, my little town I grew up, on every corner they have homeless people. There are some, it's actually, homelessness has become a business for a lot of people. Not only the people that are helping them, but some homeless people themselves, and some people who are not homeless at all with signs. And so you gotta sort of look at that person and say, that's Richard Lemieux. I can help him. He really needs gas for his car because he's going to help other people drive around to the meals, So I'll give him $5 for gas. But going back to North Bend, they put together what they call at that time willow bags, which are kind of fun. 'Cause I don't think I told you that there are 6 homeless missions in the country named after Willow.
No.
One in Dunkirk, New York. For now 9 years, people lived in a house, in a shelter, 28 people, right on Lake Erie where the wind and the snow comes in there. There's another one in Debbie McCumber, the wonderful romance writer. She paid to fly me down to speak at one of the country clubs when she had a big house down in Florida. Vero Beach is the name of the town, and they now have a shelter there called Willow's Ark. And there's another one in Kent, Washington called Willow's Place. There's another one in Englewood, Colorado, and one in Albuquerque, New Mexico. This is wonderful. They're all named after my dog. Nobody names anything after me. But my dog has a long legacy that continues that way. And that all happened because one lady in Dunkirk, New York, she read my book. She went to her church on Sunday. She held my book up in front of everybody and said, this is a book that you all have to read, and we're going to open up a homeless shelter here, which she did. 1 year in Dunkirk, New York, 6 people died from exposure, froze to death, because they could get 28 below. So, yes.
So what's in a willow bag?
Willow bag, it's got $1. It's got a candy bar or health bar. It's got toothpaste. It's got a toothbrush, and some other little things. Sometimes, rather than the money, they'll put a McDonald's coupon in there for McDonald's meal, stuff like that. And you can have it in your car, and if it, again, there are some people that won't use that money wisely. There are some people that don't need the money. They're just trying to live that way. And there are people who desperately need it. And so you just have to look at that person and say, yeah, I can help this person. I know I can. And you can find them. You'll see them. So, any other? Yes.
So, from Homeless and Broke, how did you get the book published?
I was very fortunate. First of all, I told you about Major Baker, right? Major Baker of the Salvation Army. I would give him chapters, as I gave chapters to my psychiatrist, as I would write them. And it took me over 2+ years to write that book. First longhand, and I at the big old Lutheran or Methodist church up on the hill, St. Luke's. I would sleep in their parking lot at night, and I'd write it longhand. Willow would sit over in the passenger seat and fall asleep, and I would sit under this churchyard, and I'd write it longhand. And then when I got good weather, I would take the old typewriter I had, and I would type at picnic tables. And so, as I gave chapters to Major Baker, he said, "This is really good." Of course, he's in it, right? He's in it, Major Baker. So this is really good. So he said, "I'm going to send every Salvation Army officer in the world a story about you, and we're going to get your book published." Well, he did. He sent it. I talked to him on Friday. He sent it out. Monday came. I came rushing in. "Major Baker, is that me?" No, nothing. And so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, gone. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. No response. "Major Baker, think they got it?" "Oh yeah, I know they got it." So a month goes by, nothing. 2 months go by, nothing. But then we get a call from says, "I heard about this guy. Maybe we should have him go down with us to Dallas at the, what they call it, the National Advisory Board meeting." They have an advisory board locally at every Salvation Army place, and then they have a national one. And that includes people like Jerry Jones, the Cowboys owner, and businessmen, the guy who owns Chick-fil-A, these millionaires and billionaires, who I've met, who never gave me any money, but I met them. But at any rate, down there, a friend of a friend who had passed the manuscript around said, "Well, I have a publisher in New York City that we went to college together, and I just talked to him a couple weeks ago. He was telling me about it, how this publishing company he's got, and he said, I'll send you a manuscript to him, but I don't think I don't want to say anything. I doubt he'll do it, but we'll try. We'll send it, and I'll just put a little note in there and ask him to look at it." And he did. And a week later, he called me and said, "Richard, we've decided we want to publish your book. We think it'll do a lot of good for people." And so it has. Yeah, that's exactly how it happened. People, again, people, just one person after another, if you will, made that happen. There's a long story about how the book, the original manuscript of 425 pages were made in a copying machine at the Methodist church on the other side of town. 425 pages, one at a time. That copier was hot. I mean, you touch the side. In fact, it stopped 2 or 3 times just because it was overuse. So, but that is indeed how that happened.
Any other questions for Richard? All right, thank you very much, Richard.
Good. I will. Yeah. I told you about my school program. This is what I do. This is my little school program. If you want to donate to that school program, I buy books. So right now there's 2 schools. Their books. Some have disappeared accidentally. Others have got so bad that pages are torn out. And so I keep on buying new books for them, and then I go speak. So I'll just put this over here by the door or someplace like that. How about this? If you want to donate, keep me going on that issue. So thank you. This is my life now. I have a chance to tell your story of helping other people. That's your story. That's what that book's about. It is your story, not so much mine, but yours. And so thank you. Thank you.